good man who's a lepidopterist, and lepidopterology comes from the ancient Greek word of scale or wing, and is a branch of entomology concerning the scientific study of moths and the three superfamilies of butterflies. Someone who studies in this field is called a lepidopterist, archaically an Aurelian, and that is Graham Young. So I want to welcome today Graham Young and his wife Felicity. We're very pleased to have. I know Graham very well and is a very good friend of mine, and so is Felicity. So without further ado, we're going to hand you over to Graham.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Len, for the welcome.
Okay.
All right, tonight we're going to be talking about this butterfly, which I don't think you expected it to look like this. That is the Brenton blue. Can you all see it all right? Is the light? Yes. Okay. That's the Brenton blue butterfly. And this is what it looks like from the side. And that's the size of it. Just a little smaller than a matchbox. Now, first of all, before I start the history, I'd just like to tell you about the life cycle of this very interesting little butterfly. First of all, after it's crept out of its hole in the ground and dried its wings, it flies off to find a partner. Now, if the female accepts the male, they then mate. And after that, the female flies off to find what we call a host plant. They will only lay their eggs on a certain plant, and in this case, it's the indigofera, or the indigo plant. Now, indigo, of course, is a very, very old dye. It goes back thousands of years. Right, it lays its eggs on this plant, but on several plants, because it's got quite a few eggs. There's another one. It actually glues them to the top of the leaf. And in a few days, the egg hatches, and a tiny little caterpillar comes out. There you are. Now this caterpillar starts eating away at the top of the leaf and grows. But you might have seen, I see the caterpillar first instar. Because what actually happens is the caterpillars, as they grow, they cast off the outside shell or exoskeleton and they fit into a new one. And this particular caterpillar goes through 4 instars. And there he is, or she, in a second instar. And they leave the plant that they were feeding on, and they go down to the ground. And here's a really surprising thing that happens. An ant, called a Bain's sugar ant, comes along and collects them, because this ant, who actually normally lives on top of the ground in old logs, is part of the whole cycle of this butterfly. The ant then goes to an indigofera plant, and they dig holes down into the bottom of the plant and expose the roots. And the next thing is they carry the little caterpillar down underground. Isn't that amazing? So underground, the caterpillar starts eating away the very, very nutritious roots of this indigo plant. And it grows and grows till it reaches its 4th instar. And its 4th instar, it pupates. In other words, it turns itself into a pupa. But the ants are still looking after it, because in exchange, the caterpillar has a little gland on its back where it exudes honeydew. And the ants love this honeydew. So they have this partnership. Now, it then becomes dormant, and it stays asleep for about a year underground. And then it's got 2 periods of when it's actually flying or hatching, and that is either October, November, or February, March, just for a very short period. There it is. Again, it's coming out of its hole, drying its wings, and ready for another cycle. They only live for 2 to 3 weeks. So very, very short time. There it is, flying around, looking for a partner. And here it is. Now, it's quite an arduous job, flying around and then mating and then looking for another female. So I need to supply a bit of petrol. And what they do is they get nectar out of flowers. Now, the nectar in flowers, which is a very sugary substance, is sucked out of the flower with their proboscis. The one on the left, it's got it all rolled up under its head, and on the right, it's ready to stick it down into a flower and suck up some of its nectar. Now, in England, in the UK, the scientists found out that there was a huge, huge loss in butterflies and bees and other insects. And they put it down to herbicides and pesticides that the farmers were using. But then they discovered, no, it's not only that. The thing is that we haven't got enough flowers to feed them, or open flowers. Because a lot of the flowers then were closed like this, beautiful, but double flowers. And the insects couldn't get inside them to get to the pollen, so they were actually starving. Now the Royal Horticultural Society then decided what they do, and they're doing it at the moment. They're taking out all the doubles and putting singles in, like that. They're really easy for the butterflies to access. And it's actually already increased the number of butterflies and bees. It's amazing. So a lot of the pollination is done at night too, by moths. Right. Next. Also, while I'm in the UK, there's a farm which used to be a dairy farm, and they decided to take this farm back to nature. It's called Knet Farm in West Sussex, which is only 40 miles from London. And it's owned by Isabella Tree and her husband. She's an author. And she's the author of this book, Wilding. And I could really, really recommend it for a good read. But they introduced a lot of the old species, like the longhorn cattle and the old varieties of pigs and a lot of other species. And what's happened then, a lot of the insects and plants have just started growing there. And what they also found was a very rare butterfly, which they thought had almost gone extinct, suddenly picked up. There it is, Turtle Emperor. And if you look at Wikipedia, the largest population of the Turtle Emperor are on this farm. Okay. All right, let's get back to our story. Now this gentleman, in 1858, was the first one to find this butterfly, which he found in Neisner, and he called it the Neisner blue, Roland Trimmer. But this butterfly wasn't seen again for 119 years, when Dr. Jonathan Ball found a population in Nature's Valley. You see where the arrow's pointing? Now he found this population, but unfortunately, this population died off after a few years in about the 70s because of buildings. Building just interfered with where they were. Then nothing happened for a long time, 14 years in fact. And then a lepidopterist from Bedford, actually one of our top lepidopterists, they've been looking around and he found the same butterfly, found a whole group of them in Brenton on Sea. And that was the best thing that ever happened for a long time. Then, I'll just read this quickly. A housing development plan for the site was prevented from being built after a highly publicized campaign to save the species from extinction by Dr. Dave Edge. Due to this, the land where the species breed was procured by the South African government and created into a special nature reserve in 2003. It took 10 years of hard work by Dr. Dave Edge, who in fact wrote his thesis in, I think it was 2006 or 2005 on the Brenton Blue. And that was his doctorate. This is another picture of the Brenton Blue Reserve. I hope I'm not standing in the way. And this commemorative stamp was brought out in the year 2000, which helped the campaign. And that's the Brenton Blue. Now, the next thing that happened was that Jeff McKilleron, who you might know from Nature's Valley, and Dave Edge tried to re-establish a colony of Brenton Blues in Nature's Valley. Unfortunately, after a lot of work, it never flew. But this is a 2006 issue of Nature's News. We still hold our breath in anticipation of the flight of the Brenton Blue butterflies. The next flight period is in November, and from October we will be doing some serious monitoring of any flying creatures in the vicinity of the fables. Unfortunately, after all their hard work, it never came about. Right, the next thing that happened, you all remember this, that terrible fire that raged on the 7th of June in 2017. This is a picture from the Herald newspaper in Port Elizabeth, taken on the 8th. And this fire burnt down houses, homes, businesses, plantations. And the worst of all, of course, fire damage in the reserve. It burnt the place down. And as you remember, I was telling you about the ants that live on logs, in logs, that lie on the ground. All were totally annihilated. All that was left were a few butterflies underground that survived it. And Dave Edge and his wife Hannah monitored the place just after, when they were first allowed out after COVID. And all they could find were 3 butterflies. This was one they managed to photograph, also quite damaged, and unfortunately not sustainable. So, this is the next thing that happened. Put out this wanted poster. Yep. So 20,000 rand payable to the first person group or organization who discovers another place where Brenton Blue butterfly is breeding. Now, the botanical or scientific name for this butterfly is Orocropsis niobe. Niobe was a Greek goddess, and she was always showing off or bragging about her family of 7 sons and 7 daughters. And the gods didn't like this, so they killed all the children and turned her into a stone, where she stands and cries forever. Poor old Niobe. Now, Cupid. There have been changes of names. And a lot of the name changes have been done, well, all the birds' names have changed, not all of them, but some of them, and a lot of the butterflies now. Because the world butterfly organisation would like the names of the butterfly families the same in all countries. So what's happened now is they've changed the name of the Brenton blue to this little guy who shoots arrows through lovers' hearts. Now it's now called Brenton Cupid. So I don't know what it's going to think about it when it finds it again. I don't like calling it that. So I phoned my friend Dr. Dave Edge last week, and I said, what does he think about the possibility of finding another population of them? And he said, well, Graham, I don't have a short answer to that. So I thought, yeah, well, I know this guy. I'm not going to go into it because I don't think I've got enough airtime on my phone. But what makes me feel positive about the whole thing is that all lepidopterists must have two qualities. One, okay. One is they must be optimistic, and the other quality is patience. So there we are. I think that in conclusion, I would just like to thank Dave Edge for sending me a lot of material that I used in this talk. And also my very clever librarian wife, who helped me in my research and also checked my work. Thank you for the speech. Thank you all.
From all of us, Graham.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'll show you what he's got. I think he knows it. This is
Ah.
a Tilima red wine from Tilima.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, I have my back to you.
Questions? Okay, Graham, we've got questions.
Yes, questions. Yeah, but please, as I said before, please don't ask me any questions I don't know the answer to.
It's a risk.
Form of reproduction. It's very interesting about the ants being very long.
Yes.
Does this apply to other butterflies too?
Yes, yes, of course. Quite a lot of the blues. In fact,
I mean other butterflies.
only the blues.
And
The blues, yeah. But just recently, in England, a butterfly that had been extinct for years was reintroduced to the Yorkshire Downs, and that was called the large blue. Large blue, like that size. And that's exactly the same. It uses red ants, which take it underground, and it also, I think it's thyme, wild thyme is its host plant. Yes.
Graham, are there any British or other lepidopterists working on this Brenton blue?
We have some very keen South African lepidopterists, and they're all working on it. I tell you, everyone is looking. But because of the location, they're very coastal, and they have to have that plant. So they find areas within looking. They haven't discovered by yet. But considering the time periods between all the finds, we're still looking forward to finding them.
Do you personally believe that they are out there?
I'm an optimist.
Good.
Yes. So, there are no other questions.
Graham, I've got a question.
Yes.
Is the Baines ant still available or have all been burnt up?
Yes.
Okay.
They're all over the show. They're not only there, they were thinking of trying to reintroduce them, but unfortunately other ants, which are quite nasty, moved in before they got in.
Pity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has
Has the Indigofera plant, has that regrown?
Yes, that, when I showed you that, the butterfly with the broken wing, that was sitting on an indigo. Yeah, they've all come back. The candlewood trees are growing nicely again. And most of the plants, there are other butterflies there, quite a number, but unfortunately not now. Yeah. Right. I'm sure we can go and enjoy a little now. Is that good?
All right. Thank you, Graham. On your behalf, I want to thank Graham again. And I want to say that I also want to pay tribute to my previous chairman, Clyde Noble, who was chairman from 2017. Before that, we had Peter Tallis. And before that, Colleen said was